And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me, David Dubine, here on Brighteon TV Uncensored. Why is everything on our planet locking up in unison? We have stacking materials across Europe, stacking grains across China, the United States, the Mississippi River. Everywhere you look, there's a bottleneck of something. Now there's gasoline shortages, massive bond crashes, the economy's crashing. Food production has stopped in the EU, too expensive to even pack food with the factories. Now, why is all this happening in unison is more the question. So I'm going to run down a huge amount of connecting dots today so you can really get the wider landscape of what's happening from the last 3 months to now, and then you can almost forecast out through the next 3 months how fast this is going to continue its downtrend as we move through November and December with the last of the harvests. How's our world looking these days? It seems that the information flow is so tidal wave-ish, if that's even a word, that it's really difficult to keep up with what's happening. It's happening at such ferocity and speed. It truly is like a tidal wave sweeping through the planet of events, and each of these events is more intense than the next. Some dovetail and are catalyst for others, and once you start to try to map this out, by the time you think you even have a gleaning of it that makes sense, suddenly there's another just full heat wave of news stories through the day that each one of them could be their own video or series of topics. So I sat down the other night and just tried to pull out what I thought over the last several months were the main indicators of something that seems to be a plan. And you can see how they do connect together. And from this point where we have arrived so quickly after 3 months, where do we go in the next 3 months? Because this is really the catch-all, the tell-all is when we come into the harvest time right now. A couple of things are happening. The USDA numbers are inflated greatly on the carryover stocks, which means from last year how much grain really was there available in the silos across America, because what they're finding is with this bottleneck along the Mississippi River and all these barges that are now unloading onto land, they're finding that the storage houses that were claimed 100% full, we don't have even one space for one pea or one grain of corn or wheat to head into. It's that packed, they go in and it's 50% full or empty. So there needs to be a huge reaccounting of the carryover stocks, which is going to shock the markets. So this is what I look at here. Why is everything globally locking up in unison? Just a quick word from our sponsor. It's true carnage in the stock market, unlike anything we've seen. The average stock is down 41.7% from its 52-week high. More interest rates are expected. Meanwhile, gold is down only 8%. So it's proven to be a source of protecting wealth and a hedge against inflation. Call the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Patriot Gold Group has a no-fee-for-life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold or silver, and you may qualify for the no-fee-for-life IRA. On qualifying rollovers, give them a call, 888-546-7020 to get your free investor guide today. And now on with the video. This, what you're looking at here, is the most valuable asset and commodity on the planet, period. Bars of gold in comparison are nothing. Barrels of oil, nothing. This is what makes civilization chug along. Enough calories allow the human, whatever countries, civilizations, societies, to innovate, to work. Manpower. Without that, you're laying on the ground with a 5-pound bar of gold next to you, and you will trade that for a loaf of bread. This truly is what is society. Not enough food. We've seen this through history. And, as I slide us back into these what are called grand solar minimums, the only possible causation that I can see why everything is happening right now in unison is the self-proclaimed elite give themselves that title. Understand these cycles because they have this information hidden from the general public. But if you knew the onset of the cycles, and let's go back through time here, about 1200 AD, temperatures started to drop across the planet, and many even from China in the Yuan dynasty, all the way as you travel around the world, there's collapse after collapse after collapse of dynasties, kingdoms, fiefdoms, monarchies, royalty. It doesn't matter if it was in the Mayan era or if it was in China. Europe was affected. Dark Ages started. Like all this had a major effect on the planet. Population declined, of course, crop production lost, people migrated. Now that was called the Wolf minimum. Temperatures started to stabilize and then return, and then suddenly they fell off again into what's called the Sporer minimum. And I would encourage you to take a look at the events of 1450-ish. Suddenly Magna Carta pops up, and whoa, it's a new way to oversee humanity after another collapse. And then the temperature started to stabilize again, and whoosh, we fall right back into the modern minimum 1650s, and this is the most famous instance of, and well-recorded, event of what had happened and how many people migrated, what kind of wars spurred from this. What population was 25% reduced globally, 25%, from not enough food, starvation, disease, from the Maunder minimum. And we had a slight version in the Dalton minimum, which was brought on by Mount Tambora in a year without a summer, which we just saw again down in Tonga at the beginning of the year. It is now verified that they are going into a year without a summer, which will greatly dent agricultural production. We are in another grand solar minimum on set right now. If you knew this and you knew society would not be salvageable based on historical cycles, what would you do? Well, you would take as much money out as you could. You would extract wealth. You would distract those. See, this is the big thing. Distractions need to be at the uber, and the more the signs are in the skies, Jupiter's atmosphere heating, the atmosphere expanding 80,000 miles, more luminous. The more signs there are in the skies, the more signs that we have here of crop losses and massive price increases, the more distractions there will be, so more wealth can be extracted at this time. Now, it's just simple solar forecasting, and where we're coming into the Eddy grand solar minimum. This has been known for 20 years plus, and perhaps the excuse for global warming was given to explain all these changes away. So what do I mean by these changes? Well, if we go back into the Federal Reserve founding 1913, and then we look into the middle 1930s here, I think this photo was from 1936. Gasoline used to be 13 cents, and then whoa, they were having problems also during the Great Depression, and suddenly it was 16.5 cents. Slap the sign right over it. Now, how did our gasoline go from 13 cents a gallon to nearly $9 a gallon in California over this last 3 months? Average in Tennessee went up around 5. How does it go from 16 cents to $5? What happened there? What wealth was extracted through inflation? Theft of the value of a fiat currency. Now, you can only run this out to a certain point, and then it collapses. The end of fiat. So I'm wondering if these cycles were known well before the year 2000, prior to that, by setting up this system that only had a very short shelf life to build up, extract, prepare the elite for whatever safety zones that they're going to run to. Ourselves here setting up near the mountains and national parks in Tennessee, this is our safety zone, but the elite are building their bunkers, etc. Was this cycle known further back 100 years ago when the centennial minimum really started to collapse temperatures, and then there was that catalyst that said, whoa, we have 100 years. Okay, how many times has this game been run before? Because those prior collapses were also overseen by what was then royalty or emperors, and then the collapse, the reemergence, and we come into the society we see today. Now, how many other things are overlapping in history here? And let's just keep it real short in. You know, this pipeline sabotage here. Sabotage is one thing. Okay, that's a fact A. But what you're seeing here is an unchecked, unregulated release of methane through the oceans up into the atmosphere. Unchecked. Again and again, how many photos did we see this and how they talk about runaway methane? Oh, you're killing everything in the ocean. Unchecked. What is the narrative, the next move? Oh, we got to go to war over this. Where did I see that before? Iraq. 1991. Remember the invasion of Kuwait? Same exact excuse. Oh, the oil wells are burning. It's unchecked. It's unmitigated. Oh, it's going to cause a massive disaster. There's no regulator on. Oh, it's flowing free. And then we saw these pools of oil. Same, but different. They took us to war after this. The excuses remain the same. Unchecked, so then this needs to happen. Now, not a lot of you that may be watching were alive or even understood what was happening during that time of the Gulf War. Luckily, I was. So when I saw it happen again now with the same unchecked natural resource, pipeline break, whatever, hydrocarbon emissions, unchecked, using as the same excuses, now we need to set up for war again. Okay, this is a little spooky on the overlap there. And suddenly, out of nowhere, we come the great American worker shortage. Well, it's a great global shortage now. Like suddenly we had a fully working economy with fully staffed companies through the wazoo. And then suddenly we're coming down into we can't even keep the lights on. And the doors open because there's that much of a shift that quickly within a year and a half of complete society functioning at optimum, everything moving at light speed into we don't have enough workers to even flick the lights on in the stores. What? How did that happen so quickly? How many people have just quit because they've lost hope? Where have all the workers gone? That's more the question. How could we go from a full functioning society in less than 2 years into a collapse phase? And this is happening far faster than anything in the Roman Empire. Roman Empire, it took 50 years, and it was the final 20 where it really collapsed. Circa 450 AD, really, in the history books. So again, I would like to take you back just into a full functioning society 2 years ago into Germany. Now they're saying frozen and fresh products, complete shutdown. Worst crisis since World War II. Now if we look at World War II and we go back in there, what was the entire world shut down? So now we're looking at Germany post-World War II. And also in addition to this, okay, this is cold chain and supermarket. We could go to BASF and chemicals, which we'll talk about in a second. But it's gotten to the point now, I've done a couple prior videos here at Patriot TV about the energy shortages, electrical price increases 10 or 15 times that have shut down steel smelting, zinc, aluminum, tin. There's no more tin cans coming. They ran out of bottles in Belgium. Like there's a huge amount of things that shut down already on the manufacturing side of the base metals and the base glass that was blown into bottles that then went on to beer and breweries. That is now not functional either. So in Belgium, they're cutting back on their beer production because they don't have enough bottles, bottle caps, cans. What do I see here? Well, Dutch vegetable producer HAK has ceased production also. They're not manufacturing anything. They're using the jars after they have their processed bean. That does not take a lot of power to do that. It takes a huge amount of power to turn a piece of steel into a liquid and reform it into something else. Copper as well. Huge amount of draw on electricity to take that from a copper ingot, those bars that you see, and then run that through and make a rod out of it and then thin it even further and make wires. That requires a huge amount of electricity. Packing something made of a vegetable into a glass jar requires almost zero power in comparison. But here's the scary thing. They're shutting down because they can't be guaranteed of the amount of power they can receive in January and February. So they're just shutting down. And so are so many other food manufacturers and food repackers. So then what does that say for forecasting out 3 months from now, 2 months from now, what's available in the supermarkets on the shelves across Europe? Your guess is as good as mine, but if I were going to err on the side of caution, I would say a huge amount of products will not be available due to high energy prices and companies stopping all manufacture. Now, where do these people go? They're laid off. Natural gas prices are spiking. We've seen the food prices spiking everywhere in the world. You can try to explain it away as inflation or this or that. COVID's gone. Everything should have reopened. I thought we were going back to normal. There's no more normal. It's into the bizarro and macabre from this point forward is the new normal, if there is such a thing. Like they toss that around so easily to bait and switch everybody. We're never going back to 2019. Are you kidding me? Now here, a quarter of adults in the UK, this is from The Guardian, a quarter for anybody, 25% of adults in the UK are eating cold meals to save on their power bills so they don't use their stoves. That's unacceptable. This is a major world economy. And the amount of people that are going to move into fuel poverty, or meaning they can't afford to eat and heat their homes at the same time, that's the definition of this fuel poverty, is going to move up from 4.5 million up to 6.7 million. Now, what does that do for a draw on government resources? It's going to cause more economic strife and more inflation as the governments try to print their way out of it. And at the same time, within a few months, how do we go to all food purchases being tracked across supermarkets in Norway? People can't afford the food. They can't heat their food. They want to track your purchases when you go purchase in the supermarkets. Like, how has this all come in the last 3 months at the same exact time? It's overlapping on top, so everything is moving in uniform fashion. Like, we see all governments moving in fashion like a school of fish. Never used to be like that. So whatever's inbound is so massive, so catastrophic to what we consider the hierarchy of civilization and government itself, that it's not salvageable, and everybody is working. All governments across the planet see something so devastating inbound and seriously months or a year from now. I keep calling October of 2024 with the global liquefaction event as the second magnetic field sets up in the outer solar system, which I did in last episode here at Patriot TV, talking about the very same thing. If you want to watch that, a full hour of graphics explaining it. We've gone from living a life to a full track trace, monitoring purchasing, and the spam being an anti-theft devices. This is how quickly it's transitioned and shifted. I look at this and I shake my head and go, that's a joke right there. But it's reality. People are stealing the food out of supermarkets to the point where they're going for the high dollar Hormel hams and sort of thing. Those are all locked behind wire cages now too. So anything processed meat that's in a can in a supermarket is now a target for theft. So I mean, look, this is, if I were to show you this in 2019 and say, hey, in 2 years, your world is going to be this bent and destroyed and in collapse phase that they need to lock up the spam cans, you would have laughed at me. I would have laughed at myself if I had heard that too. It's comical. And the other absurdity is now this whole transition to green energy, and we got Teslas with generators behind them powering the car. Because A, California told all Tesla owners, electric car vehicle owners, don't charge. It'll tear down the power grid. It'll pull too much supply, so please don't charge your brand new Tesla. This is where we sit. Locked up spam and generators on the back of electric vehicles because the actual grid to provide that energy service is in collapse phase as well. Like, at what point do people not wake up and go, all right, it's collapsing literally everywhere around us? The very grid to deliver power, that's wiped out in Ukraine. So just a distant early warning on the grains side of things. All grain shipments have stopped out of the Ukraine, and they're not set to start again at this point. The last vessel that left out of there was the 15,000 tons that was headed to Ethiopia. That grain also didn't pass inspection for animal feed into the EU. So what do? The UN, like, oh, we're saviors. Send that rejected grain down to Ethiopia, but give us a pat on the back. But that was, I think, one of the last chartered vessels that'll be leaving out of there full of grains. So all that other 9.6 million tons, so they claim, will be stuck in the Ukraine. It's not going to leave. So then, well, here's where we get to the bottlenecks. Like, what's going to happen now? Because all that new grain, they did plant some, but not nearly what they normally do. Generally, it was about 50 to 60% cut from what they normally plant. So you're looking at 40% of planted acreage. They're still going to get some harvest out of that. But where are they going to put it? Because all their grain storage facilities are full too. They never exported what they normally do. So now we got old grain in the warehouses, new grain inbound, but you can't export it because the ports are being damaged. All rail routes as well. Got gas shortages across France. I've had somebody write it, well, it's because of the strike. No, it's because there's shortages and this whole debacle and EU non-elected officialdom seem to be part of the problem here, and Italy's experiencing some of the same. Gas rationing, we see rationing of power across Poland where now they're pulling up coal in the back of their trunks. If this was in Poland, these cars would be at a coal mine, opening their trunks to put coal in the back so they could heat their homes during the winter. That's what Poland is like. Police are checking people's gas tanks here. See a police officer off to the left? They're checking the gas tanks. If you have too much fuel in your tank and you're in line here, they'll say you got to leave. This is only for emergency fill-ups. If you're too full, you can't get any more. So let's talk about bottlenecks for a second. I know we're coming up to the break here, but I'm going to give you a primer about the bottlenecks and what's happening globally. Now, something has severely broken at the point of delivery or embarkation or import. These are what are the grain barges moving down the Mississippi River here in America. We are in harvest season. What you see here is considered just one barge. It's a series of those barges connected together, but as a count off the Coast Guard, this counts as one vessel. There are currently 182 of these just waiting there to move anywhere because they're stuck. It's a massive drought in the Mississippi River. It's some of the lowest they've had in quite some time. The Army Corps of Engineers is trying to dredge it to get these things through, but they're waiting both north and southbound to transit traffic here. These are full. Now they're getting panicked and they're pulling them to the side and seeing if they can get them over onto trucks to get that off the rivers and get it somewhere into a facility so it doesn't go bad. Because the same thing that happened with Ukrainian grain, it won't even be passable for animal food. This is what the American crop might turn into. So the Mississippi River is so low, and look at this line of trucks waiting to get into a storage facility. Now, what's the manpower involved of taking that off of a barge that was already packed, moving it onto a truck, and then trying to get it somewhere? Profits are being eaten away at every single step of this. So where are things being stuck right now of the integral, incredibly important bedrock pegs of our society, food and energy, but it's starting to pile up across the planet because it can't be moved anymore. So it's either going to rot where it is, or they're going to have to move it at a discount and you're going to have to come with your own truck and pick it up, because currently where it's stuck is where it stays. And we're heading into the cold months.